Naja Monroe and Aaron Card.
Okay.
So
Thank you for
they,
joining.
those two may be joining. I mean,
Okay.
like I said, you might just have Augusta here.
Okay. That works. You all had school today, I assume?
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem at all.
Same here. Yeah. It was great. It was actually the perfect storm. It blew in around 5 o'clock and blew out by the morning. So,
I know. I love that. I feel a little nervous about how I don't want any more days because like right now we're going
no.
up to that Friday, the
Yeah, I
12th.
know.
So
I know.
I'm like it will go into the next week. So I'm hoping that we don't.
I know. I know. Although we are supposed to get snow every day, I think, until through Friday. So we'll see.
Yikes.
It's been a wild winter for sure.
Totally. Totally, totally. Yeah, we probably are one of the earlier start times in the state. We're like at 7:10.
Oh my gosh. That's really early. I'm sorry, you said Augusta?
Yep. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm the principal of Coney.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really early.
Yep, we are,
Um,
but it's we just it's because of the
busing.
elementary run and all that. So I'm interested to see
Hmm. Hmm.
what you guys are have in mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of logistics involved, but um, that's very early. So,
We did a survey with the kids at one point,
mhm.
and they were like 75% keep it at the
Really?
time it is. Yeah.
Huh.
But I think it was because they like getting out. We get out at 1:48.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
The day ends earlier and they can do it allows for, whether it's jobs or
yes.
after school activities, but it is really early. I mean, it's interesting. I'll touch on the science a little bit. That's really
Yeah.
not, really just to make sure everyone's understanding what late start actually means, but the science is very interesting for sure.
Mm, I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I have an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old, and my 13-year-old starts at 7:40, and my 8-year-old starts at 8:50. And
Oh, wow.
I mean, my 8-year-old is up at 5:30 every morning, pretty much. So sort
Exactly.
of like they've had a full day before they even go into school.
Mhm.
So anyway.
That's how it was with my kids. My kids are grown now, but it was like the little guys would be much, I mean, they're up and moving.
Oh yeah. There's no rest for the weary in our house, that's for sure. Um, and he's been that way since he was a baby. So
Oh, I'm trying
it's
to figure
just
out if I should stay in the seat or not. It's so bright right here.
Oh yeah, I had to actually move my desk at one point because the snow, the glare off the snow was
Yeah,
so substantial. So,
there we go. A little better. I was
okay,
going to write.
we'll give everyone a couple of minutes, probably
Okay.
5 minutes or so, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll give people a couple more minutes, and I'm trying to think dismissal times. They're probably getting close to wrapping up dismissals and stuff. So,
My person just said that they thought the link was in the email. Um, so maybe they think that they have to register beforehand. Got in today. All right. Um, I'll write to them on that. Just
yeah, we had asked for people to pre-register,
yeah.
but I can let people in
Okay.
accordingly.
I'll see if they're gonna come.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I know you're from a school because you have color-coded books behind you. That's
Yes.
really impressive.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we had 10 register, but if we don't get everyone, I'll just start at 4:05 and we'll launch in from there. And then I was saying to Kimberly that we'll post it. We'll put out another newsroom article and a priority notice that will have the link to the landing page,
Oh,
which will have
perfect.
this on YouTube. So we're trying to have all communication kind of funnel through the landing page and the DOE. Just makes life a lot easier when it comes from one place. So,
Perfect.
So I think Abigail, one of my people is gonna are gonna try to jump in. It's Naja
okay.
Monroe. But she's finished. She thought she couldn't get in, so then she was went and
Okay.
walked the dog. So she's gonna be coming back. So just to let you know.
Okay. I'll let her in when I see her.
Yep, sounds good.
Great. Thanks. Is she going to jump in late or is she going to jump in a couple
Yeah,
minutes?
she said she's gonna really quickly get back to her house and jump
Okay.
register. So she you might have
Okay.
to. I can send her the link
Oh,
too
it's
if you.
fine. That's fine.
Okay, I can put it in the chat.
Great.
She said she's almost back and she'll register and see
I've
if it
been in
lets.
that position too. The
Yeah.
mad dash to get back. Okay. Should I go ahead and start or wait for her?
No, don't wait for her. She'll
Okay.
jump in.
Okay. All right. So thank you for coming. And as I mentioned, we'll post this recording and the slide deck to the website. But today's information session is about the later secondary school start time fund planning grant. Emphasis on planning. It is a planning grant, and it's being presented by the Office of Teaching and Learning. Um, I have a overview of our agenda, which hopefully will load in a minute here or not. It's not loading for me. Why is that? There we go. Um, so we'll go over the overall just mission and vision of Maine DOE, which you all know, but I'll just share it with you again. An introduction, the grant details, the process, the application itself, submission details, evaluation and award, the next steps, and then questions. If you could save your questions for the end and do me a favor and enter them in the chat, we'll go over them at the end and go through that. Just lets me flow through because I know some of your questions might be tied to some of the things in the sequencing of the evaluation and things like that. And it seems more complex than it is. It's actually quite straightforward. So just let me go through the presentation. Then we'll do questions at the end. Um, Overall, Maine DOE mission and vision is to promote the best learning opportunities for all Maine students by providing information, guidance, and support to our schools, educators, and leaders, and by providing adequate and equitable school funding and resources. So this grant is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate that. For logistics purposes, I am presenting. My name is Abigail Cram, and I'm a grant manager with DOE under the Office of Teaching and Learning. And then the DOE contact for this RFA, the RFA coordinator is Beth Lambert, who's the Chief Education Officer, who I'm sure you're familiar with. And her email is included there. She is your state contact. So all questions should really be funneled through VSS, the self-service portal. However, if there's some outlier question, Beth would be your point of contact. If you could do me a favor and just announce, Kimberly and Stephanie, your names and what entity you're representing, that would be helpful for the recording.
I'm Kim Liscum. I'm the principal of Coney Middle and High School in Augusta, Maine.
Great.
And I'm Stephanie Tribo. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for RSU 13.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just a reminder of what I said in the beginning about the meeting being recorded and where the link will be, and that will be upcoming. So let's get on to the grant itself. So the later secondary school start time fund planning grant evolved essentially out of the research that came out in 2014 and 2015. The American Academy of Pediatrics issued a policy statement that said that high schools and middle school students should start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. So that's very interesting for you, Kim. And in 2015, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, came out with findings that said nationally 2 out of 3 high school students fail to get sufficient sleep. So it leads to something that's a medical diagnosis called delayed sleep phase syndrome. And that started as a diagnosis as early as in the 80s. So it predates the smartphone. A lot of people like to point to the smartphone as the culprit, but it actually predates that. So it's been going on for a really long time, but it's only now that districts um, districts across the country are starting to pay attention to it and see how it translates to school. So just to give you an idea, essentially, the delayed sleep phase syndrome is when teenagers um, suffer from poor academic performance, mental health issues, even things such as teen car crashes as a result of accumulation of lack of sleep, because their circadian rhythms don't align with where they should be, given where they are in puberty. And essentially, teenagers really want to stay up 2 hours later than most of us, and they want to rise 2 hours later than most of us. So usually it's like a window of 10 o'clock at night is when they should be going to bed, and they should be waking up around 8 o'clock. So that's where the Late Start initiative kind of came out of and became this, national movement, really, in some entities. And you can do some research on your own, and that's part of the planning grant as well, for you to do that. But there have been a number of benefits that have been seen out of doing a late start within the school districts. Improved academic performance, improved mental health overall, especially regarding depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation, athletic performance, as much as obesity, eating disorders, diabetes, substance abuse, reduced delinquency, and then also car crashes, due to the lack of sleep, and they're essentially functioning in a state of delayed sleep at all times. So there are challenges associated with the later start movement, and you will come to unpack those as you potentially apply for the grant and are awarded the grant and do some funding around that. But this is what, when it came to Maine and when they started to develop how they wanted to approach it, the legislation looked to LD 396, which I'll go through in the grant details. And it's really how that Later Start grant got its origins within the state of Maine. So SB 192 LD 396 resolved 2025 Chapter 110 directed the Department of Education to develop a grant program to encourage secondary schools to adopt later start times. The purpose of the funds is essentially to allow SAUs to develop planning strategies around the initiation of later start of 8:30 a.m. or later. The scope is really around providing SAUs with the ability to submit applications on this RFA and then subsequently potential award. So the total budget, all encompassing, is 75,000. Maine DOE anticipates making multiple awards as a result of the RFA. The number and size of the awards will really just depend on how many applications we get, and awards may not match necessarily what has been requested. But we have a pretty extensive, detailed, and thorough process that we've developed for the evaluation. So I think it will be very clear how we're trying to address the priority for awarding grants that is part of the initiative. And the Maine DOE will make efforts to prioritize distribution across the state. This includes attention to geographic distribution across the state, variation in SAU size, and then economically disadvantaged students. And we'll see, I'll talk about those definitions later and how we've defined them for the purposes of this grant. But those are 3 key variables that are tied to the planning for this grant and how it might be utilized by SAUs. The anticipated contract period it's tight and it's come up really quickly. It's June 1st to September 10th of 2026. So the goal really is to have you do all of your planning over the summer, and coordinate that ahead of time so that you can lasso people accordingly. The form of agreement for the grant awards will be made by means of a standardized state agreement subject to approval by the department. And the final decision regarding the award of the contract will be made by the representatives of the department, subject to approval by the state of procurement. So the grant is going, it's the reason it's an RFA is it's actually not going through grants for me, it's going through the procurement process. So that means it'll be operated through vendor self service, VSS portal. As always, notification of conditional award selection or non-selection will be made in writing by the department, and this department reserves the right to reject any and all applications to and the requirement to make multiple awards. The RFA, its publication, doesn't in any way depict that there's a commitment on behalf of the state of Maine to award a contract. Some boilerplate things that are within the RFA, but if you haven't had a chance to go over it yet, I wanted to touch base on it. To get into the nuances of the grant is eligibility. So it's for SAUs, and the SAUs that serve secondary students are eligible to apply for the grants. And so we've included a definition in the RFA of that, of the SAUs and the definition that we're using. We would really like to encourage SAUs to partner. And in just looking at the distribution of those who signed up for this meeting, it's really scattered pretty evenly across the state. So there may be opportunities where you would want to partner with local SAUs that are close enough that you might be able to take advantage of some of the transportation logistics in the planning process. When you're submitting the RFA, there's always going to be a primary SAU, and you'll see that in the RFA as well. We talk about a primary and the basically a secondary. The funding will be distributed to that lead SAU, and then it will be up to the lead SAU and the partnering SAUs to determine how they share the funding and it's distributed. So that's a really important thing to take note of. The Title 20A 126 is the SEO definition that we're using. And it goes into great detail about exactly, who the SAUs are. I know that you probably already know what the SAO means, but we needed to include it in the RFA for clarity. Allowable use. So this is where I want to emphasize that it's a planning grant. The grant funding must be used for the development of a plan in accordance with the Maine DOE's rules 05071, Chapter 54. And the links to this are in the slide deck, so you'll be able to get those. The grants are intended to assist in the financing of local initiatives. So it's, again, to support that planning effort. There are a number of allowable activities listed here, and it's not limited to what you have in front of you here, but it gives you a framework to start thinking about it. Development of community engagement opportunities. That could be stakeholder surveys, community forums, focus group, guest speakers to help educate people about late start. A lot of people aren't aware of what it is. So if you want to try and push it, gain some momentum or get an understanding of how much interest there is in your community, it might be good to do through a guest speaker. Transportation studies. This is a big one. Across the state, there's a lot of variance across how transportation operations are being utilized. And so it's an opportunity to map current routes, times, how many stops you have along a route, the spacing of those routes, and basically look at the overall system for its efficiency and try and discern where you might create more efficiency and capitalize on the late start. So you might try and run models where you're doing new routing scenarios of 8:30 start or later, calculate the cost implications, buses, fuel, drivers, analyze the impact on elementary and middle school schedules if you've got a multi-tiered system, and then evaluate staggered dismissals, route optimization, and partnerships. So there's a lot of really interesting research out there on this. There's a lot of example plans out there that you can start looking into. And as you all get into the planning part, one of the things I'll be doing is kind of over the summer is to try and, touch base with you all and see how you're doing and help guide you to a certain degree once you've applied. So staff collaboration is another one, and professional development. related to the later school start times, and then academic and operational impact assessment, planning committee, research and data, scheduling analysis, and financial analysis, and then obviously coordination between SAUs if you're partnering or considering partnering. We have two buckets of requirements. There's required activities and then reporting requirements. The required activities tied directly to some of the examples that I just went over, but essentially you have to implement and document the planning process as you submit in your RFA application, and then demonstrate and document the collaborative planning process with SAUs if you partner with the community and stakeholder engagement, and then obviously adhere to the budget submitted and the amount awarded. The reporting requirements are due if the contract closes the 10th of September, but the reporting requirements are due the 1st of November. And the report must provide the information that follows the total project costs and the use of funds. So we want to know how you used it and the associated costs, and then a description of the collaborative planning process used in community or stakeholder engagement to understand how you connected with your community at large and your immediate community, and then an overall analysis of the findings and then any potential courses of action that you might implement based on the planning that you've done utilizing this grant. Some more details about the requirements. As I mentioned, the applications must be filed in accordance with the rules of the RFA. So read the RFA and the embedded application really closely. There's a lot of language in there that's, sort of typical of the grants, but there's also some nuances in there that are going to be really important to capture. And I'll go over a lot of those. The grant application has to be filed through the vendor self-service, the VSS portal, by an eligible entity. So you have to have an account. If multiple SAUs are working in partnership, each SAU has to authorize the application, and there's locations within the application to do that. And then obviously, it's up to you to determine, as I mentioned, how the funding is awarded beyond once it goes to the lead SAU. And again, the VSS portal is really the primary means of communication. So that's where we're going to put everything, the Q&A summary. That's where, obviously the grant application has gone live. Any amendments, we already have one actually, is going to be posted there. And then Beth Lambert is your point of contact for the state if need be, if there are any questions that haven't been answered, and you have an outlier, that would be your point of contact. So I'm going to go through the process, and I'm a very visual person, so I've put together some visuals that I hope kind of, whether you've gone through this process or not, it kind of helps guide you, and then I'll get into the weeds on the nuances of this process. And yes, the grant is for it's a planning grant, so it's planning for the potential implementation in the 26-27 school year. Thanks. That's a good question. Thank you. So the overall timeline process for the grant itself essentially runs from February 27th when it went live in VSS to when it's due on March 30th, 2026. So it goes live in VSS, and there's questions that are due, and I'll go over when those are due, and then a Q&A summary is released and posted on VSS, and then the applications are due. It's really important to know that amendments can be posted to VSS anytime between when the grant goes live and a day before the applications are due. So that would be the 29th of March. So you have to kind of have somebody that's always checking to make sure that you haven't missed an amendment. After that point, essentially approximately March 31st through April 27th is when we'll go into the pre-evaluation and evaluation period. We'll do an individual review, and then there'll be a team evaluation review and scoring, and then the award notification and decision. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes with all of that, but that gives you an overall time frame, so you can start working backwards from that. The appeal period is 15 calendar days from the award notification date. And then obviously we're targeting June 1st as the start date of the contract. So you're kind of looking at key dates there at the end of March, end of April, and then starting in June 1st. Vendor self-service VSS is the system portal that we're using for the grant. You have to have an account in order to actually apply, but you can view, anyone can view the application itself. I posted here the VSS help desk, and again, you'll get this slide deck and the recording, so you'll have that. But should you have any questions about a specific solicitation, so this RFA, in regards to VSS, you would go out, reach out to procurement because they're your gurus for all things VSS. And I'm not sure if you've had a chance to go onto VSS portal yet, but this is basically what the interface looks like. This is the RFA number, and that's an important thing to remember because it's going to be all over the RFA application. But you can click on it and review it. And again, I recommend you download it and read it in detail for all of the language and a general understanding. So I will be taking notes on questions that are asked today, and then they will be packaged with the Q&A summary for any questions that we get in the VSS portal. So we'll release questions after the 9th of March. They're due March 9th at 4 p.m. local time. And then they'll go in through a process of review within procurement. And then anytime between then and March 20th, it's actually March 20th, the Q&A summary will be released. So it has to be 7 calendar days before March 30th. So it's about the 20th regarding when we'll release it. And it's the responsibility of everyone that's applying or interested in applying to make sure that they're checking VSS for the Q&A summary and amendments during that period. And again, amendments can happen anytime between now and the day before the RFA is due, and they'll always be in the VSS portal. So the application, we'll get into the weeds here. So I developed a visual matrix just so you can understand what we're asking for. And then you always have a reference point. So there's really 5 things that we're asking for and that are the kind of catch-all for what will be scored in the matrix. And then there's subsets of those to get to a finer grain. So eligibility, priority points, org chart and additional team members, proposed project plan, and budget. And then within some of those, there's a subset to just get into more detail. So we're qualifying what we're asking for. So for priority points, there's a geographic distribution across the state, variation in SAU size, and economically disadvantaged students. And then I'll go into detail on those and how we're scoring them and how you will find out the information to submit. But we'll also look at overall past performance on previous grants. So project delivery and financial management of how you've handled the projects that you're submitting in the application is going to be really important. Proposed project plan is really what you would do for any project. It's basically a project charter. Essentially, you'd be looking for to include a project description, overview, collaboration plan, use of funds, and then a timeline. And then that timeline would include key milestones and key deliverables. So, for instance, if you're doing surveys, you're doing focus groups, that's what we want to put in that timeline, and then understanding how you're collaborating in between. So we have a scoring matrix, and again, this is kind of the high level, and then we'll get into the grain of it. But this gives you a sense that it's a 100-point scale, and how things are going to be scored, and the max points per category. You can see the proposed project plan has the highest point value, and there's a reason for that. So eligibility is very straightforward. It's a yes or no if you meet the definition for an SAU as we're defining it. Priority points is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting and a little bit more complex. So as I mentioned, there's 3 components of the priority points, and we are breaking those down for you here. So I'm going to go through the subsets of geographic distribution. So for that, we're looking for 3 things. There's rurality and population density, socially vulnerable or underserved areas, and then tribal lands or special populations. And this is a way for a grant in its evaluation to determine the geographic distribution across the state. Okay, so let me explain what we're meaning by this. So when we get into rurality and population density, it's a click of a button for you. We've even included the link in the RFA. So you'll click the link and you'll go to the world population main cities, and it's tied to the census for 2026. It has all of the cities there, and you can sort at the top here. So you'll click density. Sorry, it's doing that weird arrow thing. You'll click density, and then you can either do it that way, or you can obviously click the city and just do it alphabetically, and you will add up the towns within your SAU, and then you'll do a combined average. If you're partnering with another SAU, same thing. You'll take your combination of your combined average. So I just gave you an example here of how that would work. You look at the town, you look at the density, not the miles, square miles. And that's one of the things that's in our First Amendment. This is a little bit misleading because even though density is, population density is, does have the units of square miles or square kilometers, in this census scoring, it's misleading to say square miles. So it's really density. So make sure you're looking at density and then doing a combined average of that. I may have questions on that, so we'll come back to that. The other is also a click of the button, and this is for socially vulnerable and underserved areas. This is the link right here, and you'll come up and you'll populate with this map first, and this shows you where the high and the medium locations are for the indicators of social vulnerability. So what you'll do is on the subsequent pages, this will be the header, this Community Resilience Partnership. They did the evaluation based on census data, and then you'll look and see it'll list every single town that falls under high and then every single town that falls under medium. What you want to do is submit the one that has the highest point value. So if you have a town that falls under the high category, that's what you want to submit because you get 3 points for that. Tribal lands or special populations. You probably have a sense for this anyway, but we've allotted scoring for the percentage of tribal lands or special populations. And so the two documents I would reference would be the SAU map and then the map of federally recognized Indian lands of Maine. I'm quite sure that you probably have an understanding of whether or not your SAUs fall on tribal lands, but if not, those would be the two maps that I would reference. And then obviously you'd input whichever gives you the highest point value. So when we get into variation in SAU size, that's where we jump to the application and when we're doing the evaluating, and that's when we're going to be looking at past performance. So this will be in the very last section of the RFA, and we'll be looking at the project delivery and financial management of the projects that you submit under your past performance. The last one within the distribution is the economically disadvantaged students. And again, it's a click of a button. We've included the 2025 link. And so you'll click there, and then it'll pop up on the website, and you'll see child nutrition data reports. And this is on the state of Maine. And you'll click on FY25 annual participation program summary. That will pop up with this DOE page. And you'll want to grab this last one. And it's too small to see, but it essentially is the free lunch, free and reduced lunch percentage. And so that's the number that you want to reference. And wherever you fall within that, you'll have the allotted points value. So again, you want to submit the one that gives you the highest point value. Org chart and additional team members. This is pretty typical. We want to have an understanding of who's going to be developing the planning and how you've orchestrated a team internally and externally to develop this and implement this over basically the summer. And then proposed project plan. This is when you get into some more detail about exactly what that's going to look like. So we have a series of questions that we've included in the project plan to basically prompt you. And so it makes you think about how you're going to use the funding well in advance of potentially receiving the funding. So you do the lift early. I'll go through the 6 questions. Describe your SAU's interest in exploring a later start time for secondary students. Include the specific measurable goals and objectives aligned with this grant, why it's important to your community now, and minimum of 500 words. What challenges do you anticipate in shifting to a later start time? For example, transportation, scheduling, extracurriculars, childcare, meaning the logistics of care and or students that come home on the bus and take care of younger siblings. 250 words max. What specific outcomes do you hope to achieve through this planning grant, and how will they align with your specific measurable goals and objectives outlined in 1.0 of this application? And what are the proposed tools to be utilized for measuring success and meeting the requirements of this grant? Your collaboration plan, this is when you're getting into how you're going to connect with the community and stakeholders. Will this application involve collaboration with other SAUs? If yes, please describe the nature and structure of this partnership. And how will you engage key stakeholders, internal and external, and the community in your planning process? We also ask for you to check how you intend to potentially use the funds. And this I got into, this is not limited to, but this gives us an idea of what you're thinking. And then you have the opportunity to describe below. And then of course, your timeline. So it gives us milestones and deliverables, some examples, again, not limited to, but it's the starting point. So descriptions and dates. And then last, we get into the budget. And this is the coding for the budget category, and then the amount requested and the explanation for the request of that expense. Okay, it's a lot. The submission details. This is where it gets easy. So you pull all of that together and submit it in one PDF. So you'll submit it in one PDF, ideally through the VSS portal. There's some detail here on, if you exceed, if it's going to exceed and be this ginormous file, which I'm not sure it would be, but if it was, you have the capacity to submit in the split. You just need to name it. That's a good question. Can you use it for 27, 28? That's a good question. I'll have to find out about that. We'll put that into the Q&A summary. So essentially, just keep in mind that your overall deliverable is going to be one file submitted to vendor self-service. And I go over that a little bit here, but the file naming convention is critical. You have to have the RFA number, the applicant's application submission, and the applicant's name, and that will be the lead SAU. So basically, the lead SAU is going to be the point of contact for the application in all things, from file naming and otherwise. Even though if you're partnering, you're all going to sign off on it. And the reason we do that is we want to make sure that everybody's aware that there's a partnership involved. So evaluation and award, we will get together, the evaluation team will get together right after the due date of March 30th. No submissions will be permitted to be received after 4 o'clock on the 30th of March. And any applications that are incomplete or don't answer questions or follow the instructions will obviously be disqualified. Selection and award. The final decision regarding the award of the contract will be made by the representatives and with the approval of procurement. We'll send out conditional award letters and then go through a period of negotiations of the contract. And the department reserves the right to reject any and all applications or make multiple awards as a disclaimer. But the goal, as I said, is to release multiple. We have an appeal process, of course, after the conditional award letter goes out. That's 15 days, 15 calendar days. And then we have a lot of language in the RFA itself about the contract, and we'll go through that again at a later date, but just so you know, it's embedded in the RFA itself. The contract administrator, will be appointed after the award has been given, and then we go through payments and other provisions. Once their awards have been made, we will have another meeting and we'll get together and go through all the fine-grained details on the contract and payments. It's going to be done through Maine Pays, just so you know. So the overall timeline, just to back up to where we are and where we're going. So today is the 4th of March, which I can't believe because there's about 4 feet of snow on the ground. Deadline for questions, in addition to those that you've already put in, and those are great questions, will be March 9th at 4 p.m. to VSS portal. And then around March 13th, it's probably going to be later than that, but between March 13th and March 20th is actually when we'll be reviewing and approving internally. So this date will actually slide to be the 20th of March, and then the 30th, the applications are due at 4 p.m. So you just have to remember that someone needs to be continually checking the VSS portal for amendments and for that Q&A summary. So we'll go into a review period, award notifications, contract negotiations, and then the start of the contract, hopefully on June 1st, and then complete on September 10th of 2026. Okay. Any questions other than those you've already asked? Those are really good questions about when it can be used. So yes to 2026 to 2027. I will take the question of whether it can be used 2027 to 2028 back, and we'll fold that into the Q&A summary along with any others that come in through the vendor self-service portal. Any other questions?
I was just questioning the whole idea of partnering with other ASAUs. Like I'm perplexed by that because like we're our own municipality, and so I don't
Mhm.
know what are you thinking there? Like why would we do that?
Um, I can give you an idea. For instance, if you're a really small SAU, and want to, the lift of initiating the later start, um, would only really be potential if you partnered with another entity. That would be why you might do it. There's only one example in Maine of that where they've one district partnered with another SAU and did exactly this to implement the later start times. It's only the only one that's done it in the state of Maine. So it's interesting that the one that's been done is actually through a partnership. And it's for that reason, really. A lot of it has to do with size. And then the other is if there are any geographic components to the logistics of transportation that would be made easier by partnering. So that's where the analysis of the transportation operations becomes really, really important. And I encourage you to look really closely at that. There's a lot of research out there on exactly this. So that would be a big part of potentially your planning process. That's a good question. Any others?
I probably have way too many questions.
No, that's
I
okay.
the slide went really fast on this one thing, and I just is can part of the planning be funding for people to be on the committee that's on the planning group,
Yeah. So we talked on that
like
quickly.
teachers?
It's participation. So let me go back. Boop. Went too fast for me. Sorry, I want to go back to budget.
There was a list of things. I was going to try to take a picture of it, but
Yeah.
I couldn't get it.
Hold on. You can find it. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are what the codes that can be allocated in those categories. So potentially facilitation, personnel, I mean, a lot of it, I am guessing, is going to come some engagement, but a lot of it is just paying personnel to help participate and facilitate, and then transportation, evaluation of the logistics, and then engagement. And you can put in for other, but this is probably, I mean, this ties directly to your project plan and how you're going to do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Stephanie? No? Okay. Um, everybody thinks at different speeds. So if you come up with questions, just make sure that you enter them through the VSS portal, and then we'll be processing the Q&A summary and then putting it out it's going to be between the 10th and the 20th of March. I imagine the turnaround will be pretty quick on it. So I'm hoping it'll be sooner than the 20th. Okay. All right. I'm excited. It's a really interesting process, so I encourage you to spread the word and apply. All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.